We're back, No Filter, with Karl Wienhold. If you don't know Karl, read the bio below. Karl's a good, dear friend of mine for many years, and just does some really cool work on the supply chain and research and data, and trying to understand how we can uproot these systems that have been just nothing really short of extracting for decades and decades and decades in an industry that clearly doesn't have an issue with money. It just tends to trickle upwards and to the wrong place, or maybe not even to the wrong place, but just imbalance. And I think something that we all take for granted, as simple as a cup of coffee in the morning and paying a couple dollars for it or whatever. So we talked about what is a smallholder farmer, kind of address the issue of work versus ownership, understanding the labor process and value at that, and maybe how we can think about it moving forward. We talked about kind of that division of labor and really how to circumvent some of the bottlenecks, what it would look like maybe for farmers and people on that side of the supply chain to integrate and have access to better options, better financial options, better I said power, I guess, power to remove transaction costs, because obviously any vertical integration or horizontal integration is going to be very difficult and expensive. And I know a lot of that involves risk mitigation. But one area that I also just find really fascinating that I would love to get your thoughts on, and if I'm not mistaken, you've been writing a paper about this specifically, is impact projects. Impact projects, why or why not? Because for me, I think back to growing up in evangelical Christianity, where I didn't go on too many mission trips, but I knew a lot of people did. And, you know, that was like a big topic of conversation later, as you kind of came out of that, was just like, what were we doing? And what is impact projects? What do they even look like? And I think for me, the challenge that I have with it, and I think you talk about this in your paper, but I want you to really elaborate on, is this idea of the benevolent dictator. Essentially, we invest or give, and it in a way retains them at a particular position that we want them retained at. Which, I mean, this really pushes, I think, ideas in more complexity than just like, oh, we do good things. It's not. I don't think it's we just go do good things. How those impact projects actually enforce systems that then continue to oppress in an ironic way. So enlighten us.
Yeah, I think when you say benevolent dictator, this kind of sums up the perspective I've taken on it, which the data I've been able to collect has so far supported. But really, I mean, coming into coffee as an outsider some 15 years ago, I always found it a little bit weird. Like, I never got really why coffee companies, people who are buying coffee, who are buying the result of all of these individuals' labor, were buying the coffee at prevailing market price or whatever it was, and then like somehow made so much money with it that they can just like, I'm going to give you some back, but not as compensation, as like, I'm going to give you the things that I think you should want, or the things that I want you to have. And like this being celebrated and going into marketing. But I think like the more I think about it, it's kind of perfect that like you can hide behind the idea that the market just makes everything right. The market is justice because the market is efficient, because it just is. Which, of course, it leaves prices in a place where farmers are unable to reproduce their labor. I think the latest statistic I saw, which is a long time ago now, was 44% of all farmers in the world, of all 12.5 million farmers, farm owners that is, endure poverty. And of the actual farmers, the people who work the land, it's probably much, much higher than that. So if that's the case, then of course the market is one, not providing farmers with the value of their labor, in terms of value theory. So what they need to reproduce labor again and work again the next day. Because if you're in poverty, then you're obviously not reaching subsistence.
Right.
So this is the context in which these impact projects are happening. I mean, I think this is a silly word, but I'll say it because I'll put it in air quotes, impact. But anyway, so like some of my earlier research shows the distribution of the total surplus or profits available to be captured along the supply chain. And since the 1990s, where the study began, and I don't know, maybe before that, maybe not, the rate at which downstream actors are appropriating surplus created by the labor of farmers has only been increasing. So in real terms, what a farmer earns for a kilo of coffee profit, considering all of the improvements in technology and efficiency, whatever, is less than half of what it was in the 1990s in purchasing power terms for farmers in the countries where they are farming. Whereas on the other side, in the main consuming countries, the net consuming countries, I guess, the surplus that is captured from a kilo of coffee has only gone up for the last. I mean, of course, it goes up and down a little bit, but it's like the climate change thing. Oh, it went down, so it must be going down. But it went down a little bit, so then it goes straight up again. But anyway, it's much more unequal than it ever has been before, and it's increasingly so. Why? Because, well, there's the market mechanism. Because you pay the price, the market price is the price, so that's what it is. So basically, and so in this context, the ones on the downstream side always are always accumulating much more, and the ones on the upstream side, farming coffee, always are less and less able to meet their subsistence needs from the income they can generate by farming coffee. So you have a constant need for to send a little bit back. And I always found it so weird. Like, why is one side always in a position to offer generosity, and the other side is always in need of generosity to survive? Isn't this indicative of something much more basic and but they're constantly just marketing this oh, this is we give 10 cents of whatever coffee you purchase to buy more drying beds that these farmers can make the coffee more the way we like it. So this is the other part I always thought was so weird that, I mean, this my study's getting into it, so that's not what I'm explaining now. But what are the actual motivations, and what is the actual material projects that are going on? So, I mean, I did this analysis, and I have several hundred quote unquote impact projects done by coffee companies, as well as by government, government aid. And they're kind of the same. But by far, the most common orientation of these kind of projects, the material orientation, what's actually being done, not what they say it's supposed to do, is intensifying coffee production. So putting more coffee plants on a hectare, putting more chemicals into the soil to get more coffee out, to establish irrigation, to increase the productivity, and planting more and more land. So, basically, so in farming, you're trading nature for money. So you're taking something out of nature, sending it away, money's coming in, great. But as the more and more you intensify this, the more of that nature is getting taken out. So in order to increase the productivity of labor, in order for the same amount of people or a little bit more people to produce more and more coffee, that's got to come from somewhere. It doesn't just become manifest from the hearts and minds. It's getting this from the land. So basically, there's money going in to constantly push up the productivity ceiling, increase the productivity of labor, which theoretically would correspond to farmer income, because it's their own productivity of their own labor using their own capital. But in the context that their rate of profit is always being reduced, or not even rate of profit, their rate of exploitation is always increasing.
Right.
They're always expressing more and more surplus towards downstream actors. That increased productivity is is just generating more surplus to be expelled, to be accumulated downstream, and that's exactly what has been happening simultaneously as these programs have been going on. So I mean, I can't say like what they're all about because there's a lot of stuff going on, but I think it's kind of telling that the number one by far, the orientation is how do we intensify productivity to have them make more coffee on this land, to make more food land into coffee land, to make more of it. At the same time, supporting availability, supporting low prices by keeping the supply up in a context in which, I mean, farmers are struggling to be able to get up and farm the next day. Nobody wants to be a farmer anymore because it's a precarious livelihood. So I see this almost as like a kind of life support. Like, how do you sustain the poverty just enough so that that farmers are able to get up and farm coffee another day, to be able to send those sacks that we need to and this is again is like goes back to the same thing we talked about earlier, this idea of like the, what do you call it, the prosperity gospel is your idea, not your idea but your domain, I guess. But this like the myth of
meritocracy,
and this like implicit hierarchy that one is benevolent and is so generous and the other one is just like such a failure. He's always in need. He's always just needing charity. And like this, I mean, I'm not a sociologist, but I read a lot of this stuff. But about like, how you, by needing and being forced to receiving gifts that you're unable to reciprocate, you become in this like this hierarchy, this in the social debt to the people. And this, I mean, as far as what I read from sociologists, this is like a very powerful way to control people, to establish this feeling of superiority and inferiority. That, I mean, if you speak to a lot of coffee farmers in remote areas, I think is quite evident and also very sad, because the reality, the backdrop of this entire situation of like false benevolence is one of brutal exploitation. This is only necessary because of the exploitation that made it, one, possible for the givers and one necessary for those in need, who work for, I mean, not employed by, but are like immobile, flexible labor. They are the gig workers of the the downstream industry who are kind of stuck. So a very, very strange situation. But of course, there's a lot of diversity, but I'm in the process of unpacking that now. So like, please, I think this is not necessarily so gloomy all the time. I mean, there is genuine solidarity that's happening. And I mean, I can point to programs that exist. But this is like, if we recognize these power structures and these oppressive relationships, these like social relationships that exist along the supply chains that create the situations that need to be addressed, and look beyond like very reactive and even reductive explanations of like, I don't know, really, really messed up things like genetics or work ethic or whatever. I think it's possible to see projects that are trying to undo these oppressive power structures. They're just still a very small minority. The vast majority are just simply trying to provide sustenance, provide adaptation to suffering, allow people to maintain the status quo, by one, allowing people to survive, but just barely, and two, drawing attention away from any kind of solidarity, any kind of collective struggle against what's currently going on. And of course, we have the other extreme that's like things that happen just to try to trap people more in these cycles of poverty, of taking away bargaining power under the guise of benevolence. Sure, we definitely see some of these too.
And I'm sure that happens a lot. Like, we'll invest in this project on your land, but you have to sell to us for this amount of time. I mean, it's equivalent to like a non-compete with a company. I was even thinking from like a relatable perspective in a really cheesy, crass way, is like this idea that like a large company is going to not pay their people a living wage, but they'll give them a fucking pizza party, once a month or whatever. And it's just the same idea of like, we quote unquote do good, impact, whatever words we want to use to make ourselves feel good enough about the extraction we take. And then it's not actually what people want or need. And I think that's like one of my biggest things in the last couple of years is like really understanding that that's the true value of creating good or impact when you're integrated with other people. You don't choose what you think is best. You fucking do what they think is best.
Yeah, exactly.
And you talk to them. And it's something I literally just wrote about today that I'm putting out an email tomorrow, is this idea that like to do that work takes time and it takes energy. And by taking time and taking energy, we are then doing the exact opposite of what our capitalistic system teaches us to do, which is extract and maximize. You can't maximize if you're spending time talking to people. You can't maximize if you're having heart-to-heart conversations about how people feel about things. And so I think that's like one of the biggest changes that need to be made across the board is like, even with my own staff, it's like, I don't want to just go and make a dictating decision about like, this is what's good for you. We were just talking the other day about the idea of if I provide a monthly stipend for a living wellness, you bring me some sort of receipt or proof of what you did. Here's a list of approved concepts, chiropractic therapy, whatever. Like, I'm not going to say, it's the gym. That's all I'll pay for. Cause like, not everyone fucking works out. I don't go to the gym. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? So, but it's like, what do you want? Like, what is good for you? What does wellness mean for you? Oh, like that's growing your own food. And so maybe you want a stipend towards being a part of a local garden, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, but that takes time, takes energy. And we have business to run and maximize profits.
So. That's another one we see. And it's like folks trying to combine those two things. Like instead of just giving the money back, it's like, all right, you're not going to get the money back, but we're going to spend that money on stuff we want for you. So like, or even I saw one, I mean, there's all kinds of stories, but I'm not supposed to name names, I guess. But one was like, we're going to do this thing to improve quality. And then once we find quality, we're going to pay more for it, but we're not going to give the farmers the money. We're going to use it to pay for instructors to come teach them about gender equity. So like teach people how to run their families. And but there's all kinds of things like this. And this is like, I heard folks in the industry who, again, I can't quote, claim that it's actually better when coffee prices are low and roaster profits are high, because it enables roasters to do these kind of like giving back projects and gives people the things that they actually need. Because if they were high, they would just get the money. And because people are so irresponsible and untrustworthy, then they wouldn't do what was right for themselves. So like by being able to take all the money off the table to begin with and just like give it back, like here's your drip irrigation and here's like what we want you to have to eat. So here we're going to give you food aid, and like, all right, we want your kids to go to school and not learn how to farm with you. So we're going to make you do that. And we're going to make a school, but also they're going to learn about, as well as like hustle culture. I've seen a bunch of things like this. Like, we're going to fund your education, but it's not going to be like whatever your people want to learn. Like, learning that supports local values, but like, all right, here's how to do a side hustle in the honey business so that the coffee price can stay really low.
Can you imagine like going to a carpenter and he says, this table I built is $1,000, and you're like, I'll give you 600, but I'll put like 300 or 400 towards the table saw of my choice.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, what is that? Like, what does that even mean? Like, of course, no, that's not how this works. Like, value, money. What's the cost? What's the value? Pay it. Trust them to make goddamn decisions. And this is like, I guess ultimately a lot of this is just rooted in the structural systems of like colonialism and manifest destiny, back to meritocracy. Like, I'm better, I have God's blessing, I have God's prosperity. Dude, it's crazy how that shit is just still so rooted and trickled down to today. So mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, I mean, I know a lot of people who work for these companies who are doing this stuff and probably aren't going to like this video so much. But I say it with good intentions. But I really think don't realize that these are ways of reproducing colonial hierarchy and, you know, oppressive social relations that actually think like, well, they just don't know, so we're gonna like tell them how to spend their money because you know that's what happens. People just like get money and they get drunk. But I mean, who doesn't once in a while?
Yeah. All right. Well, impact projects. Here you go, folks.
There they are. Stay tuned for the paper.
Stay tuned. Get mad. Stay blessed.
Get mad. Get mad, Priest Coffee.